Uh,
Sorry about that.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, so this is what is our date today here? We're December 15th or 17th.
That's the 17th.
Yeah, 2020.
It's
This is
possibly
the
Beethoven's birthday, either yesterday or today.
Yesterday.
He was baptized today, which means he was either born late yesterday, or I'm sorry, yes, which means he was probably born late yesterday. Too late to be baptized on the 16th, but the 16th is usually given as his birthday. And this is the 250th anniversary.
Well, that is a big deal. It's a good way to start out. So, okay, so starting over. I'm Todd Byerther, represent the State Building Code Council. This is the Tsunami Technical Advisory Group meeting on December 17th, 2020. Ray, do we do a quick roll call? Is that what we've done in the past?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
People are just a few more people are coming in. I can tell you who's in. I can see them on the
Yeah, that's
Zoom
easiest.
screen. Okay, so shoot, I didn't pull up my agenda. I didn't expect that, Todd. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. We can.
Let me do this here real quick.
So this is Micah. Do we want to do introductions since we have a new
That's
director
what
on the line?
I think that's a good idea, Micah. So, oh, we do have, yes, absolutely. Then,
Well, Stoyan, would you like to say anything? You're muted right now.
Good morning. Sorry, folks. I'm still using my personal computer and I'm having issues with Zoom. Sometimes it just kicks me out. So I apologize. Stoyan Bumbalov is my name. I'm the new managing director, and you can call it managing director in training. Richard will stay by the end of January, so I'm trying to use him as much as I can. So I'll be on listening mode today. I'll be listening probably for 45 minutes, and I'll go back to my HR duties with these hundreds of forms and stuff that I need to sign.
That's great. Well, welcome, Stoyan. Very nice to meet you. Stoyan, we have Ray has the list of this tag. Maybe we'll go around, just say hi real quick.
Well, Karina's gone. John, would you like to say something?
Karina had her baby last week. Zoe is her name. And Zoe was, I forget exactly what it is, 7 pounds, 11 ounces or so.
Great. That's
Congratulations.
outstanding news. So Daniel's Karina's is the alternate. Daniel, you want to introduce yourself quickly for Stoyan?
Yes. So I'm Daniel Ungard from the Washington Geological Survey, and so I work with Karina and Alex both on the Tsunami modeling and hazards program. And so while she is away on her maternal leave, I will be kind of filling in her spot there. I'll also note, just for posterity there, my last name has a U between the E and the N. If you get a chance to update that.
Thank you, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Hi, Stoyan. I'm John Sue. I am relatively recently retired from the state of Seattle as the building official and principal engineer. Now representing, I now work as a consultant for the Washington Association of Building Officials.
Great, thank you, Hoyt.
Yeah, I'm Hoyt Jeter with City of Tacoma. I'm senior structural reviewer for the City of Tacoma. And I also have Clarity Consulting Engineers that I do code review for other jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you. Kale?
Yeah, good morning. Kale Ash, a structural engineer at Degenkolb Engineers in Seattle.
Okay, Alex is on. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. This is Alex Dolce-Mascolo, and I do tsunami modeling for the Washington Geological Survey and work with Karina and Daniel.
Okay, and then looks like Max. He's not on, right? And then Tim, though, please.
Oh, I'm Tim Walsh, a retired geologist, retired 2 years ago from the Washington Geological Survey, and now just a general public.
Okay, thank you. And Brandon, is that how you say your name? Can't remember.
Brene.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Two
no
syllables.
problem. No problem. Brene Walker, Pierce County Floodplain Management Planner.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you. And I'm Todd. And on the State Building Code Council, I represent manufacturing and also East Side. Okay, thank you all. So then
I'm
moving
Ray.
on. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray. You should.
I'm joking. I'm kidding. I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah,
I
great.
guess I could jump in there and say I'm Micah.
Oh, Micah, I'm sorry. I blew right over you.
That's
Thank
okay. I'm not on the list for some reason, but I'm also on the State Building Code Council representing code officials. So I guess I would kind of be the co-chair when Todd's not around. I am the technical code development manager for the city of Seattle. I'm also the chair for WABO's technical code development committee. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for jumping in there, Mike. My apologies. And I see Maximilian just jumped on. So we're just doing intros. So as you're connected now, Maximilian, can you do a quick intro for the new managing director? Sorry to throw you in there so quickly.
Yeah, no worries. Hi, sorry I'm late. Maximilian Dixon, I'm the Hazards and Outreach Program Supervisor here, Washington State Emergency Management Division. Actually activated an SEOC today for this week. Anyway, I just oversee the hazards, outreach, and preparedness programs for the state.
Outstanding. Thank you. Okay, good team. So agenda item number 2, we're going to review and approve the agenda from, for today. Can we have a motion to approve, please?
Sure. So moved.
And a second?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, I think we need a second. All
I'll
right, thank you.
second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Abstention? Okay. So approved. Number 3, review and approve the minutes from December 3rd, 2020 meeting. Can we hear a motion for that, please?
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Second.
Okay, moving seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Does anyone need a chance to quickly look at that, or? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? So approved. Okay, then our item for today, we're going to review the code language for the IBC that the team's been developing. And then real quick, before we do that, did we need to discuss the letter at all? Ray, just a quick update on that. The letter moved through and is going to the code counselor.
Yeah, so the letter that we wrote up, I submitted it to, I ran it by Richard Brown, made some small minor edits, nothing to the fact of what we were asking for, just more of the approach to the letter. And I believe that either Richard's going to sign it or Diane Gillian, the chair of the council, will sign it. And it may make some minor edits, as it would with anybody putting their signature on any document. But it is getting ready to be sent out. Richard told me that yesterday.
Okay. Sorry to just blow our agenda there and not suspend it
Nope.
properly, but I just wanted to bring that in there. And if anyone wants to bring that up in other business, we can suspend and put that in there. Okay, back to our item 4, review code language for IBC. John, do you want to lead us into this, or Tim? Probably John.
Sure. So what we sent out, what's included there, linked on the agenda, and what Ray is showing is the kind of latest draft. I did a word search in ASCE for some of the text, and basically tried to find all the sections where the maps would be referenced, and looked at and some of the other things too, and then tried to address them in some way in case we actually want to do all of that. I do have a number of questions you can see in the comments there. The comments also, I tried to explain what I was doing. For instance, what we looked at last time, well, the blue highlights are what I changed since the last meeting, with some exception, at least in that first section there. Then all this stuff, pretty much from section 1615.2.3, kind of at the bottom, just below where Ray is, all that is new. So, yeah.
John, can
Again,
I
we talked about, sorry.
John, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I'm not sure if a lot of the tsunami tech people that are on, they may not understand when in code language, if it's underlined, it's new when you're writing code. So if you get a document when we're writing, if it's underlined, that means it's new from the last. So that sometimes that helps.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, the way this is written,
yeah, standard legal language.
Yeah.
Or standard legal style.
Yeah,
Could
you strike out the stuff you're removing.
Could you
The
enlarge
difference,
that, please, Ray? I think that's you. Could
Yeah.
you enlarge that? It's hard for me to read, and I can't figure out how to enlarge it myself. There we go. Thanks.
Yep.
yeah. Okay,
I'm sorry,
so
John, I didn't mean to interrupt.
excuse me. Again, I think we went through the kind of the first couple sections there, and so we can, I don't know if people want to look at any of that. Again, I think we kind of talked about it last time. I did add to 1615.2.2 that user note that's right at the top of the page that Ray is showing. This is a way of that ASCE uses to kind of add a little bit of explanation. It's kind of like throwing commentary in the code, kind of point people in the right direction. So I kind of figured that that's one way we can do it. Just say, okay, if you need these run up and inundation limits, go to the maps or talk to DNR. The other thing, so the other thing you added was the sentence above that, which is what Tim suggested kind of last time, kind of a catch-all. It says that if we missed, if I happen to, the word search didn't work, which sometimes it doesn't, and I missed a section, this says that, hey, look, if it references the tsunami design zone or references this other figure, actually use our maps. Go back. So that's the intent of that piece. Then we get to definitions. What's the maximum considered tsunami? And I have kind of three options on that. So the first one is kind of taking text from Karina's presentation. I kind of went back and pulled up some of what that looked like, and basically talks about using the L1 scenario, and so generated by a magnitude 9 Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. Okay, so that's kind of just the straight, again, taking Karina's presentation. 1B then is was kind of the next option we could look at that would say, well, either you use the L1 or use 2% in 50. You get a choice. And this might be okay if the 2% in 50 is more conservative than L1. Okay. And then option 2 there is what Tim sent me. Use its FEMA P646 language, and it's much more generalized. It doesn't really give you any. It just says, sort of says what it is, but doesn't point you to a specific one. So
because it was meant to be worldwide.
Yeah. So those are the kind of three options. I don't know if we have a preference.
Hey, John, just real quick, can I just on option 1B? I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. it says a probable tsunami having a 2% probability of being exceeded in 50-year period, or 2,475 year means recurrent interval. So is it the 50? It must. I'm wondering if a comma is supposed to be put in there somewhere.
No,
because it's a 2%. It's not. So it's a 2% probability of exceeding 50 years, or a 2% probability of 2,475. That, or am I reading? I must be reading that wrong.
at the 2% and 50 is a 2,500 year event essentially.
Right. That's
Okay, got it.
They're synonyms, and that's how it's done for earthquake loads.
Yeah.
Got it.
So one way you could make
Thank
that
you.
a little bit clearer is you could say a probabilistic tsunami having either a 2% probability of being exceeded in 50-year period, or, you know, if you put the either in.
No, they're synonyms.
Yeah, they're not different.
I'm more
Yeah, yeah.
Not one
Once it was
or the
explained,
other.
Yeah. Yep. I got it. It makes sense now once that was pointed out to me.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear now. So I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, Maximilian, this is the same definition that's actually in the standard today, and it's used for earthquakes as well.
All right.
So, okay, real quickly again, for those of you who may not have looked at this before, where we are, this is kind of the format that IBC uses because we're amending, we're actually not amending, well, we're sort of amending the IBC, but we're mostly amending ASCE 7. And the way IBC does that is we're not showing anything that we're removing from ASCE 7, we just show the new language. And anything that's in italics is new language that we are putting in. Anything that is not italicized is straight ASCE language.
Hey, John.
So for instance, in option 1B, actually, what would happen is that the struck through language would not appear in the final version. If you were to go, we were to go with 1B, all you would get would be the italicized, that's what we're adding. And then the rest of it that's not italicized is straight ASCE 7 language. So
a couple of things, John, maybe to clear up the confusion that Maximilian and Hoyt just had, is after 50-year probability of being exceeded in a 50-year period, rather than putting an or, just put the 2475 in parentheses.
Yes, we could.
But the other thing is this the right place to put a citation for where you get that?
No, probably. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Here's the thing. I guess the question is, yes, there's a little bit of confusion there, but does it really matter?
Right.
Does it really warrant a change? I mean, do we want to try to minimize how much we're really fiddling with this thing?
Well, as long as people like Kale aren't confused, that's what matters, because he's the practitioner who's going to use this.
Yeah, I think what I'll propose is just to spend a little time kind of digesting this and thinking through it, perhaps after the call today. But I did want to point out that, John's accurate. This is actually the same way that it's defined in ASCE 7 right now, the non-italicized text right there.
Yeah, and I'll comment also. It was immediately recognizable to me in that format, so familiar, I would say.
John, do you still italicize definitions as well, or is that only in the final?
Sorry, what do you mean?
We normally italicize when you come across when you're reading code language and it's a definition. I usually italicize it so they know they can actually look up the.
Oh.
Never mind. I don't think it's not important.
Yeah, in ASCE 7 doesn't do that.
Okay, and you're right. That's what we're changing. It's my code nerd in me, I guess.
So
you're too ingrained in the ICC.
So John, this might just be wordsmithing, But the probabilistic tsunami is not a maximum considered tsunami. It's a maximum considered tsunami load.
Where are you?
In option 1B, but this will be in any of them. So
Yeah.
the maximum considered tsunami is a scenario that has consequences. And the probabilistic tsunami is the consequences are presented rather than the tsunami itself.
Well, but it's the tsunami that's generated by this, right?
Well, no,
That's
because
what
it's
you
not a
look-
singular event. It's a combination of all of the stuff in the logic tree.
Okay, right.
And I don't think you do
It's
this.
all the-
I don't think you do it this way with earthquakes. I think it's you either do the probabilistic or you do the maximum considered earthquake.
No, maximum considered earthquake is probabilistic.
Well, not if you do it along the San Andreas Fault in Daly City.
They have deterministic, yeah.
Right. And that's the maximum considered earthquake under category 4 in Daly City. Or Palm
Yeah.
Springs.
Do we want to do, I don't know. I can
It's
look
a
at the
wordsmithing. I don't
definition.
think it matters all that much, just as long as nobody is confused, I guess.
The only question is, I guess the more I ought to be concerned about, and sorry, I'm trying to do two things at the same time, which is dangerous. The thing to be concerned about is if someone would misuse it. That's the only question I would, if
Right.
it's unclear enough to the point that someone would abuse it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it parallel to the way earthquake loads are done. And since I don't have that in front of me, I'm doing it from a memory that's about 10 years old.
Yeah, I'm looking up the definitions here. Well, that's one of the other thing I was trying to do. Maximum, where is that? Max considered earthquake, the most severe earthquake effects considered by the standard, more specifically defined in the following two terms, and they have the geometric mean, peak ground acceleration, and the risks targeted maximum. Yeah, they do it a little bit. Yes, they do it a little bit differently in earthquake.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's no longer a probabilistic hazard. It's based on the consequences of for the risk of structural failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, we're never going to be able to make tsunami be exactly analogous to earthquake because it has at least 2 more degrees of freedom.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the definition because maximum considered tsunami is already defined in ASCE 7. And what we're trying to do is really just take it from the probabilistic hazard to bringing in these DNR maps, which are more of well, I think they're a deterministic hazard level.
Yeah, it's kind of semi-probabilistic because it comes out of a logic tree, but it's just selecting one branch of the logic tree.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so just for reference, because I didn't include it in here, when you're looking at option 1B, that part that's not italicized, so a probabilistic tsunami, all of that's the totality of the definition in ASCE 7.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So in option 1A or 1B, then we're saying we're not considering other sources then, is that correct? Is thinking back to Karina's presentation?
It's or if the L1 isn't there, then you use the 2% and 50, which would then cover the Puget Sound area, right?
Yeah, so the other thing that is relevant here, and this will be something that Dan is going to want to bring up later, within Puget Sound, the relevant maximum considered tsunami would be for a Seattle fault event.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's true that the ASCE 7 does have something in it that they call probabilistic for the Seattle fault. It actually isn't, because it's only one event of that size that has ever been seen in the geologic record. So it doesn't have a recurrence interval. It just is interpolated, kind of drawing a straight line between one point, which is mathematically incorrect. But anyway, but so what they actually did in putting together the probabilistic model within Puget Sound was just to essentially declare the last tsunami on the Seattle fault to be that probabilistic event. But it in fact is a maximum considered tsunami. It is a deterministic scenario. And they just did some mumbo jumbo to make it look probabilistic.
Alex has a comment in the chat box. Alex, did you want to speak on it?
Yeah, it was just wordsmithing what the L1 scenario actually is. It's not exactly true the way it's written in that maximum considered tsunami definition, where it doesn't only rupture along the splay fault. It actually ruptures the majority in the subduction zone interface, but it does partition slip to the splay fault. So I would just recommend that change in replacing right after earthquake, where it says along the splay fault, to
sorry, replace meaning delete, or what did you have some language? Is it in the chat?
Yeah, it's in the chat.
I'll put it in there real quick. Are you saying delete this?
Yeah, and instead replace that with that partition slip to a surface rupturing splay fault, or you can just say that partition slip to a splay fault to make it a little shorter. You don't need the surface rupturing part, sort of say, but that makes it a more accurate definition of what the L1 scenario is.
How does that look?
Only a geologist would understand that.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest is we're not even defining what the L1 scenario is. Can we just provide reference to where the source document where that's defined? Is it a Dogami document?
It would be Witter et al. 2013 is the publication.
Okay.
From where it's defined.
And then that's what the DNR maps are based on too, right? They would reference back to that same.
Yes.
Yeah, scenario.
Well,
yep.
Okay, so does that speak to, should we just go with Tim's suggestion, which is option 2, which just not even refer to the scenario? Just a very generalized definition.
No, I don't like that. We have the L1. I mean, one of the whole points of doing this is that we have better modeling for Washington State, and we want to use the L1.
Well, but our maps are determined using that L1, and that's where you get the tsunami design zone map. That's what the next definition on the list is. And we say you use either the DNR maps, or if you don't have them, then you use the SC7.
I think, this is Daniel, one of the benefits to using option 2 is it doesn't discriminate, because it is so generic, it doesn't discriminate between the L1 versus the Seattle fault. So it would be applicable to all locations inside and outside of the Puget Sound. So there is a certain appeal to that in my mind.
Yeah. Sometimes vague is better.
Yeah, but who's defining maximum tsunami?
It's being referenced.
Yeah.
Referenced where?
To the DNR site.
Okay, so under option 2,
that has it is going to be frozen in time to when this is implemented.
There's going to be all kinds of references that says use DNR where you've got it. That's further down in the proposals and
that's the way all the
defining what is
the building code is. They do it by reference.
Okay, so this is simply explaining what maximum considered tsunami means.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my question there though, John, is if someone were to look at option 2 and then, pull open their ASCE and look at the definition there, does that not pass muster then? Would someone have a confusion as to why our maximum considered tsunami is so quote unquote vague, whereas the ASCE defines it much more narrowly as a probabilistic sort of thing? Is that
If they have a question,
concern?
they'll have to ask, but this replaces that definition essentially.
And a little bit of history there, if you didn't know this. So a lot of the early work on design for tsunamis, structures in the tsunami inundation zone, is found in a document that was originally called ATC 64, which was then published by FEMA as P646 because they already had a 64. And a lot of the calculations that are in ASCE 7 Chapter 6 come out of that document. And that document defined maximum considered tsunami this way. This is an exact quote. So there's historic relevance to doing it this way. I'm not wedded to it. John just asked for a definition, and so I gave him the only published definition that I knew of. Although I have to admit that I wrote it in the first place.
So it's all your fault, Tim. If it's too vague.
Well, it was vague because we were actually, people were actually using FEMA 646 in Indonesia. This was actually a worldwide thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, do we have, I guess as a tag, do we have a preference for one of the 3 options there? Refer to L1 or not? Maybe we can do that. And then if we want to refer to L1, then we can wordsmith.
Something that may come up later is that the next publication on tsunami inundation that's going to come out from DNR is going to have a modification of the L1 scenario. And rather than having to explain that here, I think the more general way of doing it is going to be less confusing. Otherwise, we'll have to explain what L1 extended means.
Yeah, but the way option 2 is worded is kind of weird because you've got maximum considered tsunami, and then you have basically 2 definitions in here. You've got a probabilistic, and you have a deterministic that says considering the maximum tsunami. It doesn't say utilizing the maximum tsunami. So you've got, it looks weird to have maximum tsunami in the definition as an option when the actual title.
So it's either, but Maximilian, what it's saying is either the probabilistic loading that comes from it, the probabilistic effects, or the maximum tsunami that is being considered. And the reason for using the word considered is because that's been in the building code for a long time with earthquakes. Maximum considered doesn't mean the maximum possible. It means the maximum one that in terms of a risk benefit or a risk cost effect is the biggest one you're willing to consider. Right, because we could have a tsunami generated by the end Cretaceous meteorite impact in the Pacific Ocean 50 miles off Washington. So that would give you a 6,000-foot tsunami that would wash over all of the western United States to the west of the Rocky Mountains. We're not going to consider that because its probability is far too low.
But you could.
It's worded really weird, but whatever. If y'all are
NASA,
happy with it, then, and if that's clear to Kale, then so be it.
Yeah, it's standard code language.
I think my suggestion would be to include my suggestion would be to include the hazard level, like the probabilistic language there, and then have some other option that, since these modifications are just for Washington, it's really going to be pointing to what DNR has adopted for the maximum considered tsunami for the state. So I think it should include one portion that points to that, and then the other that keeps the probabilistic tsunami language that's part of option 1B and 1A.
Oh, and something else that might make you feel better about this, Maximilian, is that this is the maximum considered tsunami for this application. For a nuclear power plant, you use 100,000 year return interval.
Yeah, they probably use a different set of a different building code or standard.
Oh yeah, that one goes through the NRC, and they do it the same way, but they have 100,000 year threshold rather than 2,500.
Yeah. So what I don't like about option 2 is it doesn't tie back to a hazard level for the MCT, or probabilistic hazard level.
Right, and I would suggest that you could put that in here. The reason that we didn't do that when we wrote this in the first place, and this goes back to, I don't know, 2006 or so. So we knew a lot less about what the probabilistic events were in those days. And this was also meant to consider places where you could never do that anyway, again, like Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Kale. I like if you could get that probabilistic in there too. So
yeah, drop that down.
After this discussion, I like having that in there.
I'm sorry, you use option 2, but add?
Just add the probabilistic definition that you have from option 1 into your probabilistic assessment in option 2. Just make that probabilistic assessment be your 2% and 50 year.
Okay, all right.
Is that what you're saying, Caleb?
I'll figure out how to say that.
John, maybe what you do is you take all of that, non-italicized text and you put it in option 2, replace a design tsunami event based on a probabilistic assessment, considering all possible tsunami sources. Okay. Replace up to the period with that, with kind of the base text, or a deterministic assessment.
Right, so start off with the same way that ASCE does, but then add our language after the comma, basically.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to think about how does that allow us to do something that's less than the DNR map is what I'll have to think about, but maybe that might be in part of the other definitions and provision updates.
Yeah, I guess from a technical standpoint, the other issue is that technically this doesn't cover the Seattle fault event, but, right? I guess that's the deterministic one, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in the ASCE database, they did put in a probabilistic tsunami load that was essentially just using the deterministic load from the Seattle fault event that we modeled a number of years ago. And I don't know exactly how they justified doing it that way, since it doesn't have a recurrence interval. But then again, it doesn't have a recurrence interval for earthquake loading either, but they included it anyway that way. So who knows?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see. So yeah, what we're going to start with then is it's going to take. Let's look at it's going to we're kind of doing a mashup of 1B and let's call it that, and option 2. We're going to start the definition with the non-italicized portion of 1B, so a probabilistic tsunami all the way up to interval, excuse me, and then add our language or a deterministic assessment concerning maximum tsunami that can reasonably expect to affect the site. So take that everything in the last phrase in option 2. Yeah, from the comma and everything to the end there, mash those two together, and that's our definition. Okay, I got that on my copy there, Ray. So.
Okay. It's the other way around.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I thought we were including the deterministic and striking the
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
should leave
Oh.
the capital A and then
Right.
replace the design to sources.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm watching my stuff. Yeah.
And
That's
so does
good,
it,
yep.
does the deterministic still capture other potential future, considered loads? Or is that a naive question to say, yeah, meteorite, okay, of course, that's out of maximum considered, but very localized conditions of landslides, things like that?
Oh, it absolutely doesn't include landslides.
Yeah. And we're okay
That's
saying
way
that, right?
too hard to do.
Yeah.
But-
No,
but
understood.
one of the things that it doesn't consider that it might someday is, for instance, the Tacoma Fault. We know that there's a Tacoma Fault. We know that it has vertical uplift, and we know that it goes through Puget Sound. But we just did some hypothetical modeling, but we didn't really have a good kinematic model of the fault itself. And there are a couple of other faults that cross Puget Sound farther north that that might be relevant, but we're not sure. So, for right now, I don't think that matters, because what we're doing is referring back to something that's going to be fixed chronologically in something that DNR is going to make available come February, right? So future stuff will have to be dealt with a future date,
Yeah, good point.
and not in an emergency rule.
You deleted the wrong text.
I did.
Delete the design to sources and undelete or to a site,
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so
Take after the purple, first purple, take from design to the.
I'm colorblind, John.
source.
Sorry. So get rid of this, or
well, we need
Keep
the
that.
deterministic.
You want to keep that. Unstrike that.
Yeah, unstrike that.
all right. Let me see here. How do I?
Undo or reject the.
I'll just
change.
undo this whole thing here. Okay. So then leave this.
Yeah. Delete the first
Yeah.
phrase, the whole of the first phrase, up to the comma.
All right.
And then insert the unitalicized stuff from 1B and start with A from A.
Right. This is hard to do in Zoom.
Now I can't get my paste to come up.
Use control, see if you can use Control C and Control V.
There we go. Thank you, wait.
Here you go.
The only reason I know that, because I've had problems in Zoom meetings doing copying and paste and I started using that a lot more often. So.
Okay. All right. Are we okay with that?
Yep, small, just grab that comma, strike that comma after interval, and then it looks good. No, not the comma, I'm sorry, the
No.
period.
Yeah,
Yeah.
strike period.
Yep.
After interval. What am I looking at?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So the next one then is something was on the last set, but I don't think I've changed this time around, but we got the tsunami design zone map, and basically defining it as the DNR maps, or if you're outside the extent of the maps, then you'd use the ASCE 7 map.
Yeah. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to raise this question now, but we were talking internally about the products that would need to be developed, or what essentially DNR is on the hook for here. And I wanted to clarify, and forgive me if this was previously discussed and I'm unaware. Does it need to be a map, or would a GIS data set suffice? Would a web map or web kind of a web interface? I guess from our perspective, trying to understand what we need to be able to support. We need some clarity for our group at the office to what needs to be designed for this purpose. And so if there could be a discussion on that, I don't know if this is the right time for that or not, but I do want to get into it.
Yeah, what I'd expect would be something like ASCE, where there's a kind of a generic map there that's, part of official code. I don't think we need that here, maybe, but if we could do something like that, would be helpful. And then you point people to this website or whatever. ASCE has a hazard tool that they're going to basically give everyone for free. And you go in there and you pick your site, and it gives you all the information on the site.
Yeah, for the purposes of
Okay.
this, map can mean, for ASCE means this online tool.
Yeah.
So you would expect
You
them
can
to
just call it
DNR
that, Dan. So the thing that you have that DNR produces, you can just call it the tsunami design zone map.
Okay, but it doesn't need to be a quote unquote map, such as what I have in mind, I guess, is a PDF publication or something like that. It can be a web-based, a website, and then on that website would be an embedded map software, kind of like a GeoPortal or something like that,
Yeah.
that the user can then go to. Okay.
Yeah, and
That-
you're
that
using the
clarifies things a
map
lot.
a little bit too specifically, because what map really means is just a one-to-one correspondence between the real world and some representation. And it doesn't have to be on a piece of paper. It can be in a GIS database.
Okay. Oh, good. I just want to make sure I had clarity on that because, yeah, I guess I am perhaps being a little too literal with the term map here. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't, kind of looking at a workload of having to produce maps for, all of Washington state. Having it as a GIS product that is hosted on a website is much easier. Something we could easily support, I would say.
Yeah, and Daniel, let's see, where did I put that? Yeah, the part of this would be if you Ray, if you can scroll up to section 1615.2, where we talk about the design maps. That's where I've got the blue highlights and things. So Daniel, this is the way ASCE, oh, down a bit, sorry. 16, section 611, where so you can see so Daniel can see the link.
Am I in the right spot?
Yes, you are, sort of, right there.
Yeah. So, okay. So I was just wanting to make sure I was very clear on what was being asked here so that I know what to say to the people back at the office. And so when you say maps, that could mean a GeoPortal map, and the web page would be the web page that we would point people to and say, here's where that GeoPortal map product would be found.
Right.
And
So
then
you could say, if we could do something very similar, say the DNR, whatever we call these things, is available at, and then we pop the HTTP, the link there.
So
That's
Dan,
what I would envision.
So Dan, if it makes you feel any better, the human genome is a map.
That's true. Yeah.
So-
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure that there was clarity between us anyway, and for the engineers that this is not going to be a printed sort of map product, that this would be a digital, an entirely digital data set, so to speak. Okay. And then so the GIS then that would be provided or needed by the engineers for any sort of study would also be linked. Is that my understanding? I feel like I've lost connection here.
Yeah, we lost a little bit of what you were saying.
Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear me again. It looks like it picked back up. So on this web page where the map is, then will also be a link to the GIS data download that the engineers would be using for their analyses.
We don't actually need the full data. It's really just zooming into a site and getting inundation depth and inland extent basically at the site. That's the way the current ASCE 7 maps are used.
Well, they also have some, and then their tool has some other things attached.
I guess
to
that's That's
my
true.
questions down below.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I need to clarify that then, because on the ASCE website, you don't get point-specific information for a site. What it shows is an inundation polygon, and then there are run-up points at the edge of that polygon for you to do the grade line analysis from.
Correct. And then you on the site, you can draw a transect from, well, you can draw any kind of a transect. You draw a transect through your site location, give or take a few feet or whatever, and you can use that to calculate the energy grade line or do the energy grade line calculations for the flow depth and velocity at your site.
Okay, is that transect tool then something that would have to be required on these maps, or is that something that the engineers can do on the back end? I guess the concern I have there is that I do not know offhand how easy it would be to create that tool using kind of the out of the box stuff that we have.
That's a good question, Daniel. We might have to maybe we take that conversation offline a little bit, and then I could kind of, I can show you how we use the ASCE maps now, what information is there, and then what would be the key information that would need to get updated to communicate the Washington MCT hazard information to the engineers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're providing the right information and in the right format for you. And I have a strong concern that, I don't want to overpromise anything that especially can't be done by February. Building a custom tool, that is something that I do not see happening by a February deadline.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what we talked about last time was that, we're going to throw in a Band-Aid for now and try to, refer people to at least get the right inundations and things like that, and then get the tool together, when you guys can.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that will depend on, again, you're right. What information are we going to require to be on the tool, or will we like to be on the tool?
Yeah.
And then, but there's some questions I have further down in this document about, do we have this other information?
So one other point too, I thought it was brought up earlier, was referencing maps. Specific maps was important because this is a slice in time where this has been adopted, and then you have to have some date stamp or whatever the maps that were available at that time. Was that my understanding?
Yes. So the DNR maps, quote map, would get in the tool would get locked to a certain time, date, whatever. So even if they were continuing to develop the tool, it would be based on the information at this particular date.
And John, that's just called versioning.
Yes.
In GIS language. So it would just designate a version.
Yeah, that's something we can easily do. No problem.
Yeah, I just want to make sure Daniel was aware of that.
And John, you made a good point too, what you said, like a Band-Aid, because under emergency rule, this will only be valid for 120 days. We can re-up at one other time, but so there are chances to make some modifications to this.
So what happens at the end of 120 days?
Either we can do an emergency rule again and up it for another 120 days, or it can get kicked out. It's up to the council. I don't see that happening. But it'll be ultimately it'll be put in our proposal process through the code cycle for the IBC.
Yeah, it has to go into permanent rulemaking, right?
Yeah, the whole permanent rulemaking process. It'll be public comment, everything. But like John was saying, I thought it was a good point. Just it's a Band-Aid right now to get us something in the code, start working off of. Sorry, I hope that was.
Can I just ask one question? I just have one question real quick, and this happens kind of on the enforcement side and stuff, or even the designers. Reading through this, and maybe I missed it reading through over all the conversations, but when you have the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, maps, those can change, every 6 months or whatever.
No,
does it have
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to lock it down to a version.
Great. Okay, that's what I was hoping you. That's what I thought you were. Okay, good. Exactly. That's what. That's perfect then.
Yeah, so I guess the clarification on the DNR side is we're going to continue making products and generate new, new publications, new stuff. That will be independent from this process, that when this gets stamped and put into action, it'll have a date on it. Regardless what we produce after that, it's still going to use this until the next time the cycle comes around and you restamp a new version, hopefully with all those publications then updated into it kind of thing.
Yep.
That'll be a much longer process between cycles.
Yep.
Do we want to come up with a name for these maps for simplification of talking about them? I mean, because we're going to be talking about our version maps, we're going to be talking about the DNR maps. I just think defining a name for these maps for this would really help simplify some confusion when you're explaining it to somebody.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping
And-
DNR had some kind of official name for them.
Well, we can just call it the Tsunami Design Zone map.
Do
Make
with
the
all this
official name.
with all this interesting discussion, do we want to just have a definition for what that is, and then make sure it's very clear that that's a geodatabase, like it says, like the lower half of what we're seeing right here, that it does define it as a geodatabase that's going to get locked. A version is going to get locked. And then where just out of curiosity, if there is conflict between a PDF, there shouldn't be, right? But and a geodatabase, how is it defined that the geodatabase controls?
In
The PDF won't
ASCE,
have the same resolution as the database.
Right. That's what I'm wondering, if there's ever any, not conflict, I guess, but just resolution concern.
The way it works now is this map that's given in figure 6.1-1 that's referenced there. You look at that figure, that just shows you the extent of the geodatabase, and then basically it links you to their website.
And that's where you put in lat long, and that
It's an interactive. You can zoom in and out. You can, all your functionality is then on that website. But Todd, to your point, I do like the idea of maybe defining the DNR design map in some way, because in ASCE 7, they define the ASCE Tsunami Design Geodatabase. Perhaps we then define for purposes in Washington State, a DNR Tsunami Design Geodatabase or something to that effect.
I guess I'm just thinking of, as we design with seismic design hazards, so forth, I can look at a map, but then I go put in my lat long, I print it out. That's part of, what I submit, right? That was a definitive on that lat long. Those are my design values.
Yep. And that'd be the same way you use these tools is, you can extract information, you can screenshot how you're doing it, you can show what you've gotten from the tool. That's part of your calculation package then too.
Yeah, and with the seismic hazard database, the grid cells are 6 by 6 kilometers. So we're drilling down way, way, way finer than that with this stuff.
so what I'm hearing then is kind of the areas where I've in these definitions where I've got highlighted the Washington State DNR maps or DNR in some kind of abbreviation. Kale, you were saying that there should be a definition for a DNR geodatabase, basically.
Well, it would be nice, and it would be analogous to what's in there now, because this, for the ASC one, it references version 2016-1.0. So you could then, in that definition, you can reference the version and everything.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I would recommend a date in the definition or the title of the map.
Yeah.
Or a version.
Whatever version number,
Yeah.
because that'll be affixed to every version going forward.
Okay, let me make myself a note here.
Because the easiest way is almost for DNR to just kind of, to swap in their maps for where ASCE has maps. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do in these, the implementation of the standard is just propagate that change through chapter 6.
I guess from our perspective, what we were considering was that we would basically be essentially just recreating the ASCE Tsunami Design Zone Map and Design Geodatabase, but using DNR's data.
Yes.
So, you know, on your end, Kale, it would look more or less exactly the same, save perhaps maybe that Transect tool. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check that out. But it, you know, at least for the perspective of what you see in the data you get, it will be the
Mhm.
same.
Okay,
That makes sense to me.
let's see.
This is all very helpful because I just had a meeting with DNRs last week, and we're going to be doing the similar thing for the WUI code with the DNR and the maps. And so
The
it's gonna
what
be-
code?
and they call it the WUI code. It's the Woodland Urban Interface. It's part of the fire
Oh,
code.
yeah.
Mm.
Wildland Urban
Yeah.
Interface.
Yeah.
We just call it WUI here.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no, I'm familiar with that now.
and actually they weren't familiar with us working in the tsunami thing, and so we're gonna get together with them, and this is gonna be a good learning tool to help in those maps as well.
Okay. Okay, I think we got some direction on the definitions. We'll continue to work on those. So Ray, if you could go ahead and scroll down to 1615.2.4. I think that's the next section. Yep. Okay, so this one here is again, the only change I made here was to make a generic reference to the tsunami design zone map, since it's hard to find. ASCE just had a reference to their figure, and I'm just removing the reference to the figure since it won't be their map necessarily. So that's the only change there. Everything else should be the same. Ray, in that version there, and apparently in the version I sent you, I don't know if updated versions will do this, but the R over HT kind of in the 1, 2, 3, 4th line should be, both of those should be italicized, and the T should be a subscript.
Okay, you're gonna send me something new, right?
I'll send something new, yeah. Okay. The next section is a question, again, to Kale. I get in the comments there. Kale raised this in the last discussion we had, this section. I don't show any changes here because I'm not sure how to fix it. Or if we need to. Basically, this says that you use the ASCE geodatabase or something that replicates the waveform, amplitude, and period from the source. It's basically what the language says. And the question is, does that second option to use waveform, amplitude, and period cover the use of the DNR information without making any changes to the text? If we do need to change it, the question is, does DNR model have this information, amplitude and predominant waveform period? If so, then you can make a change. If not, then ASCE is really the only place for that information. I said maybe this is an issue that can wait until the DNR database, geodatabase is available. We just leave it alone until we have that and then figure out what we've got. But that is a question for Daniel maybe. Is that information, amplitude and predominant waveform period, included in DNR information? And maybe Tim.
It can be for the offshore points that they have. So if we were to take their points, we can make an equivalent value for those as well. The caveat being there that that require a B grid results, which are a little coarser, but still better than theirs. So that would be an improvement anyway. We do not, and I will double check, Alex, if I'm wrong, please correct me. We do not have predominant period available to us through our modeling.
Okay. So sounds like so it sounds like we do need to make some changes here no matter what, because we don't have that predominant waveform period. I don't know, does that mean, Kale, does that mean you default to the one in the code, in the standard?
You know, I've not done enough study to understand how the period would change kind of the onshore inundation, you know, depth and velocity. I can clearly understand the amplitude.
Period is probably help, you know,
Yeah.
the forces, right? I mean, that's you go to those graphs, right? And the in
Yeah.
and out, right?
I know that it will change the onshore. I just don't know how sensitive it is to the, you know, that
The
period.
period is extractable from the modeling. I mean, you couldn't actually have a model if you couldn't get the period out of it, because the model is showing you the water surface depth and velocity at every grid cell over
Yeah.
time. And so it's fundamentally in there. It's just a matter of whether or not it gets extracted into the database, because you don't save, I mean, these are gigantic files, and so you don't save every point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can certainly say that we have not extracted in anything that we've done the period. And it doesn't seem like Alex is on right now. Perhaps maybe we lost him. He hasn't responded.
So I'll ask an ignorant question. Is waveform period sensitive to location? Or is it more the
Yes.
source?
Yeah.
So the issue with that is that you end up getting interferences with later waves.
Yeah, okay. Yep, yep.
And also,
okay.
The incoming wave and the outgoing wave interfere with one another as well.
Yep.
That's not captured at all in, as far as I'm aware, in the ASCE database. I don't think it's even considered.
No.
Kale. It's a fairly important consideration for scour, but it doesn't end up being, as near as I can tell, it doesn't end up being an available variable.
No, but I think they give you some generalized graphs on on what to use instead, rather than including it in the database. For instance, okay.
So Kale, for all the stuff that you've worked on the outer.
I'm sorry, say that again, Dan.
I was going to ask Kale, for all the stuff that you've done on the outer coast, we've never actually used ASCE's offshore points directly, and we've always had you've always had the a site-specific model done by scaling as needed the L1 scenario. So I guess I'm trying to think of how to word this. It seems to me that everything that you've done so far for a category 4 that requires a site-specific, we've never had to go down this route. And I'm wondering if this language could be simplified because of that, or is that just kind of a, I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time trying to put the words to thoughts here.
Yeah. Well, actually, Daniel, you bring up kind of an interesting point, because the projects we've worked on have used the L1 scenario, but they actually have been scaled to this 100-meter water depth wave amplitude, and it's over a certain, I think it's 80 kilometers. I can't remember the exact extent, but we've used the L1 scenario and tried to scale it to that offshore wave amplitude. I don't believe we did any corrections for period in those site-specific inundation models. But Daniel, you do bring up an interesting point that if we're going to use the L1 as the source, then and you're doing site-specific inundation modeling, the amplitude and period are what they are, because it's the hazard level. You're doing a deterministic site-specific study, right? What this is telling you in this section in section 6, this is telling you how to do your own probabilistic hazard analysis, identifying your own sources, probabilities, doing kind of the logic tree, but then making sure that you're still meeting ASCE's offshore amplitude. So perhaps what you do is we say for site-specific, you just use the L1 scenario, and since that's the maximum considered tsunami, you don't have to match. I mean, you'd be matching the offshore amplitudes and periods they are going to match because it is the scenario that we want to use in the state.
And the predominant period, as I understand it, looking at this, is simply the input wave.
Right. Yeah. And that's
That-
where I was
that's
a
how this
little
allows you to
confused
do
why
it,
the
yes.
predominant.
Yeah, so this is not looking at how the period changes with later waves and interferences.
No, you're right, Tim. You can do a site-specific inundation model by basically creating a wave at the 100-meter wave depth and then propagating it on shore. And this gives you, I think, the characteristics of those waves to create that source, if you will.
So Ray, if I could share my screen real quickly, I can show you what ASCE 7 has for waveform. If I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I can show this to you.
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Okay, you have to share it on your end, don't you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. So
go.
you have to stop sharing, I think.
Oh,
It says I can't do that when someone else is sharing. Let's see, where did it go? This guy. So just real quickly, I mean, this is the table that they have, and this is, I think, that they're looking for. Do we have similar information? And I don't remember what all the variables are, but potentially amplitude, huh?
Yeah, so those periods are pretty generalized. I don't think they're much of a worry in this.
Okay. And then you're supposed to do this other, look at this, and that's your waveforms, I guess. So, and this is at the 100-meter depth.
Right. Yeah, maybe what I should do is maybe Daniel and I should chat a little bit more about how the L1 scenario could then be used for these the site-specific inundation modeling.
Okay.
Because if it's the if that is the scenario that we're going to use, then you don't have to define these offshore amplitudes and periods because they're pointing to each other. It's the same. They're the same.
So we would do the same thing. We would say if you have, where DNR has the information, use that. If not, then you go here.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that it could just be a provision in the Washington Building Code that says where DNR is available, swap it for ASCE Tsunami Design Geodatabase. Otherwise, use ASCE.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that one's not
has that been
resolvable at the moment.
No.
And again, maybe it's something that can be.
No.
We
Has
don't
that
need
been
for
adequately
the
stated above,
emergency rule.
John?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think my connection's a little choppy. Has that been clearly stated above the part about where DNR maps do not exist or where DNR modeled coverage does not exist, swap in for ASCE design?
Not sure I caught all of that. Yes, but if I'm hearing you correctly, the idea is that, if DNR does not have the information in their mapping or your database, then you have to use ASCE 7. There's no place else to go.
And Daniel's question might have been, where do we capture that? I don't think that language has been crafted yet, right?
Not for this section.
Yeah. Yeah. It could either be in the section or maybe there's a way to do it in the in chapter 16 of the Washington Building Code. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of doing that in a lot of these other places. We're doing the same thing.
Okay.
For instance, in one of the earlier sections, we're saying, for instance, the tsunami design zone shall be determined using whatever we call these maps. And then for areas not covered by the extent of those maps, then go to ASCE 7.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that in several places.
Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like we can't do much with that. Again, is that, I guess I would ask the question, do we need to for this emergency rule? Do we need to wait until you guys have figured that out before we go ahead with the emergency rule?
I would think so, because otherwise you come to this section and
Okay.
you wouldn't go to, at least the way that I read it, right now, it wouldn't point you back to the DNR hazard maps,
No.
design maps.
Okay. 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 So I'm just putting a note that Gail, you and Daniel will have to have a talk.
Yeah, coincidentally, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, and we can talk through a little bit more of this then.
Okay. So, and then the question was, okay, yeah. So the next section then, Ray, if you can scroll down to the next section. And it's a very similar question here. Does, there are negative and positive leading amplitudes, waveform. Again, this is the question, what information does DNR have? That's what the comment there says. And we can add a user note to tell the user to get the information from DNR if it's not readily available. But again, if you're gonna just develop your own database with the same information that ESCE's database has, or geodatabase, then I think we're okay. And we just have to throw in language referring to the DNR geodatabase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think same thing. Just need to talk through some of this with Daniel a little bit more.
Okay.
But one way or another, the model is the model, and it will show a negative leading amplitude or the other. So there isn't going to be an option, because the model will only show one of those two cases.
Okay.
And
then
in
the
fact,
question,
in every case, it does show the negative amplitude first.
Okay. So the question is, the
an
next
important
question.
distinction.
Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
I would say an important distinction on Washington's coastline is that for the outer coast, there is no negative leading amplitude. Because of where the subduction zone starts, it is a positive leading wave on the outer coast. It's only once you travel into the Strait of Juan de Fuca and Puget Sound is there a negative leading amplitude. So at least for the purposes of understanding the tsunami fluid mechanics, the outer coast behaves differently than the inner Strait and Puget Sound.
But what I'm saying is that it's unambiguous in the model. The model will show one. It won't give you an option of one or the other at any location.
Correct.
So my next question, the next comment there, Ray, was about the, that one there. It says, so they gives you, the SCE 7 gives you the option of an integrated generation, propagation, and inundation model. Given this language here, do we need specific reference to the DNR model? Does the DNR model qualify as one of these things that they're talking
Yes.
about here? And so the
Yeah,
question is, do we just
it
leave the language
absolutely
alone?
is.
Yeah. And so the question is, do we need to make any changes to the section at all then, given that this is what DNR's model is? And maybe we can add a user note or something like that as use the DNR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that language is, I mean, that's what these models are.
Okay.
Yeah, John, I don't see if this needs to be changed, because here the given offshore tsunami waveform amplitude and period would then come from DNR instead of from ASCE.
Okay. Okay.
So this sentence is the projects I've worked on, this is how it's been done. We've used a L1 scenario being the integrated generation, propagation, and inundation model, but then it is scaled to meet the offshore amplitudes.
Mhm.
So, but back to your original question, I don't see if this needs to be changed once we've swapped out DNR for ASCE in the previous sentences
Okay.
or previous sections we looked at.
Okay. Okay, all right. And then the last section there was something I've added. So again, ASCE talks about this subsidence and that you need to take into account. And I'm asking the question, did I hear correctly in the last meeting that the DNR maps include subsidence in it?
Yes.
Yes, that's part of the
Okay.
initial condition, is the initial ground deformation, because that's what triggers the tsunami.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So we don't need to have separate reference. So my point is that what I added at the last sentence then is sufficient to say, if you use those maps, it's already included.
Yeah,
I think
and I
that's
think
fair.
that's a good clarification to make as well, just so the engineer knows that that's already been taken into account.
Yeah.
Kale, for your perspective, is that information something that also needs to be included in the data package? Or is just knowing the total flow depth, including subsidence, enough? Does it have to be specifically called out?
Daniel, I might need to give that a little bit of thought because it might relate to how you would calculate the design inundation depth at the site, because that's based on, let me just give that some thought, okay?
Sure, we can talk about
I
it
will
tomorrow.
say, when we've been using the L1 scenario, we kind of have a little bit of a Frankenstein. We're using an L1 scenario scaled up for those offshore wave amplitudes. Then we're trying to figure out, okay, what does ASCE show for subsidence at the site, and then make some adjustments in the model for the, well, really, I think it's an adjustment to the digital elevation model at the site. So there's a disconnect, but if DNR might bring all that stuff together. So let me just think about how that works, and then how you'd use that to calculate your required like safe refuge elevation and your design inundation depth.
So kind of leading into the next question then. Oh, sorry. Did I? Tim and Kale and Daniel, are we saying, by the way, we want to get rid of the scaling to the 100 meter?
I think so.
Well, that is a good, yeah, that's a good question for me to talk with Kale about. And kind of the whole reason that this came into play is that, you know, the problems with ASCE is that we do not believe they went through a rigorous enough seismic design process for their scenario. And so if you take that as kind of an overarching observation or decision about their data, then inherently, by having to scale to the 100 meter, you could be scaling to something that isn't appropriate in the first place. And so one of the things that we've noted when dealing with their data out there is that their uplift values in the current iteration of the source model that they're using, from what we've seen, has asperities of unrealistic proportions, that they're showing in some locations uplifts values that are greater than any ever observed on any earthquake on the planet to date. And it's kind of an issue of data management problems. And so that is entirely a bad data management and data design issue that was then propagated forward into the design geodatabase. It's something I believe they're correcting in the next version, in the 2022 version. But the reason it exists in this is part of the reason why we called to question the use of their offshore amplitudes in the first place. So to Kale's point, if we were to replace the offshore amplitudes and just use the DNR maps, then I would say we would not then need to do that scaling process. But that is, I think, a good discussion to have.
Well, and one of the things to say here, Dan, is that that's kind of the fundamental problem with probabilistic modeling, is that you're trying to formally quantify uncertainties. So when you put your logic tree together and you have scenarios that you put into your logic tree that seem unlikely, you have to make a subjective judgment as to what weight to give it. And I think that's what happened here. They just subjectively gave too much weight to an extreme example that had never been seen. And it's just like the earthquake maps are the same way. There was one guy from Stanford who insisted that you could get full slip all the way down to below the Cascades. And so Frankel thought that he needed to include that, but he gave it a 1% weight.
Yeah,
And that was arbitrary. It was just everybody else said, no, that's not possible. But the Stanford guy insisted.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I had to step out for a minute for COVID response related activities, but I'm curious. I mean, the 100-meter bathy issue is a big issue, and if we can remove that because it's faulty and it's causing issues, then I'm all in favor of that. So however that works, I would say from emergency management perspective, I am in favor of that.
It's not a faulty concept. It's just that there are problems elsewhere in the ASCE database that get propagated through that.
Yeah, I think just keeping in mind that the point of it's very similar to earthquake again, where you have a floor, you don't want to go below, and I think that's what they're trying to do. It's like you can do all these probabilistic and whatever else, performance-based design, but you can't be below whatever it is, 80% of whatever the normal forces are. They don't want you to go too low, just because you got a great model and you got lots of computing power.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase what I meant was that based on how the probabilistic modeling was done, right, using that 100-meter bathy line, 80% or greater process, because of the faulty modeling, in my opinion, as well as the low resolution, then that has caused issues.
Yeah, we understand. Yeah.
Well, and one of the other issues that it caused that is still kind of confusing to me. Dan, I think, knows more about it, but that doesn't necessarily adjust the initial input ground deformation, right? So fundamentally, the way these things work is the amount of uplift that you get offshore determines how much subsidence and where it is on land. But apparently in this probabilistic data set, they're independent, and they can't be independent physically.
Yeah, and that goes kind of to the question of subsidence that Kale I asked about, was because they are, at least the way that they've been done presently on the outer coast, they are not kinematically linked, which is geophysically impossible. So I think this is a good point of where this will provide a nice update to make it a better product in that sort of sense. The other thing, I think, removing kind of this 100-meter requirement, what it also does, which is not something we've presently had to deal with, but we will, I'm sure, at some future point, is that for locations inside the Puget Sound, there is no 100-meter bathy line within anywhere close to them to draw these sort of site-specific results from. So I think that kind of solves two problems at the same time.
Well,
and the other thing is that this becomes irrelevant if we're already saying that the ASCE database is being superseded by the DNR database. Therefore, there isn't an ASCE input to consider.
Well, okay, yeah.
Except where maps don't exist.
Yeah.
What? Somebody said something?
Well, I said except where maps do not exist. So we still, at least for the time being, need both.
Okay, so at some point then, when Kale and when you and Daniel talk about this, you're gonna have to figure, what's the substitute? Do you not do 100 meter at all? Or you just don't do the scaling? And that's to me, a little bit of the language question we have to
Right.
work out.
Well, as Dan just said, though, it is only relevant to a site that is not covered by a DNR map. And you can just say that in here.
Well,
Yeah.
that's my point, Tim. Do you still have to, but even so, do you have to scale it, right? What you come up with on our models is the question. Do you still have to scale that to the 100 meter, whatever ASCE comes up with, so that, again, what ASCE is envisioning is making sure you don't go below a certain floor.
Right, but I think what it seems to me is happening here is that if you don't have a DNR map to use, then you just use the ASCE database.
Right.
In which case you don't have to scale it because it's already got the values that you're going to use.
My question is, do you need to scale the DNR? That's the question.
No, because it's superseding this.
Yeah, John, I think what I'm hearing is the answer is no to your question, because the ASCE 100 meter amplitude, 100 meter water depth amplitudes are believed to be flawed or are flawed.
Well,
Okay.
That's
they're getting
only if
replaced
you're
by
not
this.
going to use the ASCE database. And what we're saying is if you're not going to use the ASCE database, you use the DNR database. So it ends up not being relevant.
Well, it could, anyway, depending on the language. So what I'm trying to get at is, okay, so Kale, are we getting rid of the 100 meter thing totally? That's the question, I think.
Yeah, if it's in a location where the DNR maps exist, then yes, I think you get rid of any scaling to the 100 meter depth amplitude.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'll have to think about is, let's say the DNR maps are available for Grays Harbor County, and let's say you're at the northern end of Grays Harbor County, and ASCE has you match, I think it's 80 kilometers off the coast. What if your 80 kilometer depth crosses past where DNR has data available? So we might still end up with some kind of weird spots, but we'll have to think through that. And Daniel, you and I should talk about what does DNR have available, and how will we bring that into those kind of border areas.
Yeah, I think that would be a good point of our discussion tomorrow.
Yeah. So yeah, John, I don't think we'll be able to completely resolve this right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm raising the question so that we can craft the language later.
No, I agree. It's a really good question. Yeah, I just can't figure. I can't sort through how it works just yet.
Yeah.
But basically, the 100 meter depth is just like if you think about for seismic hazard. If you're going to do your own probabilistic seismic hazard analysis, there is a floor to where you can't reduce your hazard too much. That's kind of the same idea here. Yep.
Yeah.
Crickets.
So I guess the intent is at some point these code language changes, this tag would vote on them. As we've talked about, Daniel and I need to have a little bit more conversation to kind of think about what would be available in the DNR maps and then how that would craft or how that would work into the language.
Would you mind if I listened in on that meeting when you guys talk about that, just so I can get an idea what's going on?
Yeah, John, I'd be happy to have you join.
Depends on the time, but yeah, when are you guys meeting?
Daniel, right now we're just scheduled for half an hour tomorrow, but I don't know if that's going to be enough.
No, I think that's we may have underestimated ourselves now for the task that's been set. So
yeah, Ray, is it okay for us to schedule this meeting on the call, or do we need to take that offline?
You could schedule it on the call. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. Does 11 to noon tomorrow work for Daniel and John?
Works for me.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just update this invite then for 11 to noon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, John, for joining us.
Okay, Ray, I think that's all I had on the code change, and then I'll make updates where I can, and then send them back to you.
Okay.
Did we agree on a name for this thing, this animal?
My vote would be to try to make it consistent, and instead of calling it where there's an ASCE tsunami design geodatabase,
Right.
can this be a Washington DNR tsunami design geodatabase?
I like
Yeah,
that.
but they also they talk about the design zone map, for instance. So
Yeah,
that
Washington
Oh.
design zone map or in Washington,
Wa-
just plug Washington.
okay, all right, we can do that. Just say Washington Tsunami Design Zone, whatever. Okay.
Map, yeah. Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be called geodatabase, but just because it really is, it's intended for design purpose. It's a tsunami design, map essentially. So I think it should have that language in it.
Okay.
Code guys like as simple as possible.
Yeah, and we'll add all kinds of new acronyms too.
That's
Okay, I'll figure out something. I take it that DNR does not have an official name for these that they already
No.
use.
No, we do not.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I like the idea of just keeping it very generic and just saying Washington Tsunami Design Zone Map or Washington Tsunami Design Zone Geodatabase. If
Yeah.
you're talking about just the data itself, I think keeping it nice and simple like that is a great way to go forward.
Got it.
I really appreciate all the effort going into this. I mean, I think this is going a long way of helping to address and clarify. And yeah, so I thank you very much, everyone. I mean, this is really coming together.
Karina did an amazing job presenting it to the council to get this running. I think her spearheading was very instrumental in all this.
We've been talking about this for years, so it's good. She was prepped to get this going. We just, our main concern all along was not whether we had concerns with the way this was going, but whether or not our agency would go along with letting us do this. We do work for an elected official after all.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, Tim does bring up a good point. We are still having some internal discussions with our risk managers about, what sort of language this website would have on it. And I think, Kale, that kind of spoke a little bit to the discussion that we had earlier on our last call. And I'll probably run a few things past you tomorrow and you as well, John, just to make sure that the language on the website that we create is adequate for your engineering purposes, but also provides enough legal discourse to it to
Protection.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and part of the thought that I had, and I don't know if this is true, but you guys who do code stuff for a living will have confronted this before, but ordinarily the discretionary decisions are not subject to lawsuits against the government. That is to say, a political decision. And so my question is, is this a discretionary judgment on the part of the Department of Enterprise Services, or is this something that adheres to DNR, or both, or neither?
From a liability standpoint, is that what you're asking, Tim?
Yep.
I don't know if it's been tested.
Okay.
I'm
fair enough.
not aware of any lawsuits that say you should not have changed the code, or you should have changed the code in this way.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding of the law, but I'm not a lawyer. But the risk manager that Dan's talking about having a chat with coming up soon is a lawyer, and so that's the question he's going to be concerned with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think just
Yeah.
from our perspective, this isn't something our agency has really dipped its toes in very much. And so for us, it's a matter of unfamiliarity more than anything.
Well, we do get sued a lot in cases like this, and it's not specifically this, but where we get sued fairly often is when we're fighting a fire and the crew has been going 28 hours straight and they have to sleep, and so we call them off and a house burns down. And then that homeowner sues us and we always lose. And I'm not actually joking. That is a completely accurate way that this happened in the Hangman Hills fire. And that's why you guys are so concerned about the WUI, because that was someone whose house burned down in the WUI. And we've been trying to get some language that protects us. But when the legislature actually passed it once, Booth Gardner vetoed it. Sorry, that's an aside that may not be all that cogent here.
I guess the analogous case could be like USGS develops the seismic hazard maps that then find their way into the building code.
Right, that's my view of what the right analogy is. And that would mean that whatever liability adheres is not to the USGS, but to the adopters of it, because they're the ones who are making the discretionary judgment. And in Washington, at least, discretionary judgments are not legally liable under tort law.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Which is
And
why we
Tim,
didn't. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and in Washington, since we are a home rule state, that would devolve to the local jurisdiction who adopts the code.
Except that the state adopts the code.
No, that's not how it works.
The state adopts a minimum code, and then there's a local option to make some changes to it.
It still has to,
You
they
still have,
run it by the state. You still have to run it through the state.
Right.
yeah,
It still goes through the state.
but the local adopting authority is the one who actually adopts the code for that locality. We have to get an ordinance to actually adopt it.
Mhm. Right.
Adopted and enforced at the local level, right? Whether it's the city or the county where you go for your building permit.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of jurisdictions that aren't.
So one way or another, it's not DNR, in other words. That's our concern.
I don't think it's been tested, and until someone actually tries to do it, I don't know how that would fall out.
Sure.
up to the
Well,
courts
you
at that
know,
point.
we had all kinds of people suing us over the Oso landslide. And ultimately, that was the reason that we, I mean, there were some payments that we made, but the geologists were found not liable because it was discretionary judgment on the part of the local code authority rather than us.
Right. Basically, yeah. So local code, folks.
Yeah, so Snohomish County was on the hook rather than DNR for that, even though we were the ones who made the landslide hazard map for the area.
I just like to add, I just always like to add lawyers, and I have good friends that are lawyers. They get sued for any reason,
Right.
no matter how much you try. And it goes to court and a decision gets made. And, I think what I like about the codes and the way they're written and how they're being developed, at least it gives a process of how to follow and making people all over our state follow a certain procedure, I mean, that's about the best you can do. I mean, and when you find mistakes in it, you correct it. I mean, I personally don't worry about being sued if I'm doing the work to the best of my ability. I mean, I just, you know, you could get sued for, we get sued in Tacoma for someone tripping over a sidewalk.
Absolutely.
You know, that, so, I mean, so all I'm saying is I don't think that's an issue we have to worry about personally in this
It's
committee.
an issue
but,
that our risk manager worries about because he's anal retentive for a living.
That's what he's paid to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
We
someone
have
has to
risk
think about those
managers-
things.
Yeah, Seattle has risk managers too, and they do get sometimes wrapped around the axle, and you just gotta unwind them.
Yeah. I mean, our big thing is when they do requests for information, how much time it takes to get all the, you know, when someone does that request where you have to go through and search for everything you've ever communicated on. I mean, it's a real, it's off subject, but I don't know,
Yeah.
that in the jurisdiction, you have to do it. Boy, does it, I mean, we can't delete anything. So everything is kept forever.
It's bankrupted cities.
Although one thing I would say is thank God for busted hard drives. I lost everything I had from before 2009 because my external hard drive that had it all stored on it went belly up.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have don't throw that hard drive away. They may be able to get the information off it. You better save it.
I gave it to our IT group and they threw it away.
So Todd, would now be a good time to maybe talk about a timeline and some expectations? We got council meetings coming up very shortly.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're.
So.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the next council meeting is January 8th. So that'll be the last council meeting before the February 1 adoption or implementation. The codes have been adopted. This is emergency rule. Like we said, we're very open. I just wanted to open up to the group. From seeing this letter, I'm assuming that we're probably going to need. Do we want to present it to the January 8th meeting, or do we want to hold off till February? I just wanted to get a feel for the group on this meeting schedule and what we think that we can accomplish and when we want to actually present this, or Todd can present this to the council.
If we want to meet the January 8th meeting, that means we have to have another meeting between now and the end of the year, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we
Or-
got holidays coming in, and
Or the first, for at least the first week of January.
It's I think the January 8th meeting is going to be a very interesting meeting. But it's just how I just want to get a feel for. We can do one the first week. I have a training on the first week. I think it's on the 5th, and the council meeting's on the Friday. So do we think that we can have something together to present to council on the 8th with one more meeting?
We may be able to have something and then strip out the parts that aren't absolutely necessary, something that's not quite ready and is not absolutely necessary. We can strip those out and have something again that's a Band-Aid.
And remember too, the council is going to review each one of it. They may want to make some changes. We can, at the council meeting, we can pull up the document and strike and add and then approve it from that point. So it would be nice if someone from DNR could speak at the council meeting on how important this was. I think the point that, like Tim, you were saying, you've been working on this for years and now it's coming into attrition. That goes a long ways with the council.
I would have to say
I'm
it's
general
probably
public now though, so I'm not the one to do this. I retired 2 years ago.
I would think it's valuable to get it in front of the council, and then they can remand it back down if they want to pump the brakes a little bit on it. That's no problem, but let them remand it back down to us.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. It takes a little bit of the pressure off us, obviously, but it also goes the day before, correct, Ray?
No, we're not having, our BFP meeting was in December, and we're not scheduled to have another meeting until we're not scheduled to have another BFP meeting
In
before
January.
Yeah.
Would the chair and the
it's a little-
council, Diane or others, and then have hesitation of us bringing this straight to the council? I wouldn't expect so, but without it going through the
No,
BFP.
No, it's more than likely intended that way right now.
Okay.
As long as on us on the tag level, once we make a motion to take it before council, if there's not a BFP meeting before then, we'll address it. The council may say, run this through the BFP, we have some questions, and bring it back at the next meeting.
Are we a sub-tag to the BFP?
Yes.
Are we our own
Yeah,
tag?
this is a unique tag. So it will be everything that we do here in the tsunami will be ultimately guided through the BFP.
Micah, do you have any comments on that?
Sorry, am I muted?
Yeah,
No,
now
you're
good.
unmuted.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that because I know we need to get this done. I'm not sure if it necessarily has to go to the BFP committee, but I'm worried that if we don't, that it would get kicked back from the council if we don't have, everything kind of answered and most everything. This is how it should be, and this is our recommendation. If we still have open-ended items, I think they're going to shoot it back anyway. So.
Hey, Micah, is it valuable to at least get input from the council on timelines?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I was thinking whether that or the BFP committee folks or, the appointed folks. I know there's just not a lot of them on there. And maybe they would say, no, let's just send this on to council. That'd be my thought.
Okay.
I'm just throwing this out, and I don't know if it can actually happen or not, but I have a couple things that need to go through the BFP. I will speak with Stoyan and Richard, and maybe a BFP meeting is warranted before the council meeting this time. It's nothing. I don't think it would be a big deal to put one together, but I'd have to run it by them first, and I could email the group and tell them what their thoughts are.
Okay.
How does that sound, Micah?
So,
yeah, I think that's great.
Okay.
So Ray, if you were to do that, would the BFP be meeting on like the 7th, January 7th?
Yes.
Could we have a tag meeting, a tsunami tag meeting just before that, same day? It's like the 7th in the morning?
We could do that. Yeah. Todd just has to tell me to make it happen.
All right, I like that idea. If everyone's, unless anyone's opposed to it, but John, if that's,
I mean, we'll have something by then, right?
Okay.
So this is Micah. I was going to say, do you want to have it the morning of, or maybe the day before, to give the BFP folks time to review whatever document we're putting together or showing them? That's my only concern, is if we're going to be sending them something over right after that tag meeting, that you're really up against the meeting time, I would say.
I think Micah brings up a good point, because if I present something to the council, it should probably be in the proposal format on our official proposal page. That's a great point, Micah.
Okay. So I'll finish these updates that we talk about today. They will be done, what's today? Today's Thursday. They'll be done by tomorrow, probably this afternoon. And then I can get those to you, Ray. You can throw it in the form, whatever you need to do with that. Maybe that can just go out and say this is a draft, and we're still got a couple things we're working on. But at least put it in front of the BFP so they got some idea what's happening.
And if we have it in the proposal format, I can edit it directly during our meeting. If we want to change something, if we have another tag meeting, we'll just edit that proposal format and then vote on that proposal to go to the council.
Mm-hmm. Or the BFP. Are we recommend?
I don't know if I'm gonna have a BFP meeting yet. I don't know. I got to run that by the director.
Okay.
I like to have a BFP meeting before the council meetings, because a lot of stuff gets filtered.
Okay, so it sounds like we're setting January 6th then, if possible, if BFP, a couple ifs there. We'll wait for feedback from Ray.
The 6th would be great. I think. Okay. I'll have to confirm that training day I have. I think it's the 5th though. So.
If we do it on the 6th, I've got meeting from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Couple meetings overlapping.
So do we have what's the tag think about a time?
Kale is flexible. I'm pretty much open that day.
Todd, I know the afternoons are sometimes tough for you.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. How about 2:30 to 4:30?
Oh, I'm sorry if that's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
My apologies. Yeah.
No, you said you're in.
8:30 to 10.
That would work for me.
What was
Okay.
that? What was that, John? I'm sorry, I missed it.
8:30 to 10.
Okay. Todd, does that work?
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
8:30 to 10 on the 6th. Perfect. And John, you get that to me and I will hash it out in a proposal.
Okay.
And we'll make it work. Well, what a great tag meeting.
Okay, that was a good one. Any other business that someone wants to bring up?
Just a quick question. Have the products been mailed out yet?
Yes, they're in process of ordering. We are getting them out.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I moved. So I'm still trying to figure out
Yeah.
where all our stuff is in general.
You did send me your address and
Yeah.
and we just had a hiccup when we found out we could get it electronically. So
Okay.
ASC 17. But you wanted hard copies on both, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, we will have them mailed to your address that you sent me.
Thank you.
So we expect them soon.
I have something to add. Hope everyone has a fantastic holiday, and next year will hopefully be back to normal. And
Yay.
that's what I want to add to everybody.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, nothing else, then we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
John,
Bye-bye.
just a question. Oh, too
Go
late.
ahead, Tim.
Oh, just wondering, is Tom Kinsman still around?
He is still around. He is obviously more fully retired. I've talked with him a few times in